Hello and welcome to Open Line. I'm Starlene Stringer. In March of this year, Jeff Spivey was sworn in as Irving's new police chief. Now that he's had a few months to move into his new role, well, we thought it would be a great time for the community at large to meet him. And we'll also get an update on Irving police initiatives and programs under his leadership. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. Now, I know a lot of people are going, okay, he's police chief. Where did he come from? Well, you've been here. You're definitely not new to the Irving Police Department. Can you tell us when you joined the force and a little bit about your first experience as an Irving police officer?
Absolutely. So I started here as a 19-year-old kid in December of 1986. I was in college, married my high school sweetheart. We needed a place to live and a place to work. So moved to Irving. I knew law enforcement was what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, and found a job at the Irving Police Department, and started like I said, in December of 1986, and worked my way up through the ranks since that time.
Well, let's talk about that. I understand you've held several leadership positions. Tell us what you've done in the past.
So when I first started, I was a civilian employee. When I turned 21, I applied to be a police officer, was hired as a police officer, and did those things that you think of from a policing standpoint. Drove around in a police car, went to calls for service, worked traffic. From there, I went to undercover narcotics. From undercover narcotics, I went into investigations, where I worked our capers, which is crimes against persons. And from there, I started promoting. I promoted to sergeant, promoted to lieutenant, captain, assistant chief that I had served for the last a little over 5.5 years before I was fortunate enough to be appointed chief.
So what would you say those positions, I mean, did they give you any perspective? How did that help you prepare for what you're doing today? You know,
every job I had throughout the police department, I think, prepared me for the jobs I have today, giving me the perspective of a police officer in each of those positions, because although it is the job of a police officer, each position that you occupy has different responsibilities, has different priorities. And so being able to move around through the department, learn what those responsibilities were, learn what those priorities are, really helped develop in me an understanding of police work from a broad perspective.
Wonderful. So not just for yourself, but for others, I guess then you would say those positions help develop your insight into really what makes a good officer.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, the more you understand about policing, the better decisions you make, the bigger perspective that you understand and can apply to the job as you're helping the community solve problems.
Wonderful. Now, in your swearing-in ceremony, I want to read this quote you said. You said, "We can never be satisfied with the success of the past, and we cannot rely on the community trust of the present." It sounds like an indication of your personal vision for the department, so can you elaborate?
It absolutely is. I have great faith in the relationship that we have with our community. But as soon as we start taking that for granted, as soon as we become satisfied with that, we start losing that because you quit working on it. Just like any relationship, a marriage relationship, a relationship with your kids or your neighbors, if you're not constantly nurturing that relationship and building on that relationship, it begins to fall apart. That's just human behavior. And so even as an organization as large as the Irving Police Department, we have to be consistently and constantly out in the neighborhood, out in our community, building on those relationships and not be satisfied with where we are today.
Well, with that in mind, I realize the department has several initiatives that really get the community involved. And one of those is called Coffee with a Cop. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a program that we actually stole from a different police agency, brought the concept to us. It's just an opportunity for police officers to go to a coffee shop, a Starbucks, a McDonald's, one of our local establishments, sit down and enjoy a cup of coffee with the community members who come in there on their regular time frame to get their coffee. It's nothing that's staged, it's nothing that's formal. It's informal conversation over a cup of coffee to talk about the issues of the day.
And so when does it take place? How often do you hold that?
So we try to hold Coffee with a Cop several times during the year. We actually have one coming up this Saturday at Java Me Up in Valley Ranch from 8 to 10 to reach into the Valley Ranch community, give them an opportunity to visit with their beat officers and some of the other personnel from the city.
So in the past, what have you found? Like, what is the audience? Who comes out? Is it families? Is it moms? Is it dads? Is it everyone?
You know, it's truly a mix. What you don't have typically that you sometimes see when you host a big community event are people who show up with true issues. At Coffee with a Cop, because it's not planned out, it's not so structural, it's not so formal, you truly have an opportunity to have just a casual conversation about the topic of the day. It doesn't always have to be about police work. It doesn't always have to be about a problem in the community. It's just an opportunity to get to know people on a personal level.
Love that. Okay, so another interesting thing you have is something called Shop Talk.
Shop Talk.
How does that work?
So Shop Talk was the idea of one of my gang officers, an African-American officer, John Plunkett, right after the shootings in Dallas last year. Came to me and said, "Hey, Chief, what are we doing to reach out to our African-American community?" And so I talked about some of the things that we were doing, and he says, "I think we can do better." And so in listening with him and talking about his experience, he and I decided, a barber shop was a great opportunity. It's an environment where people feel comfortable. It's not structured, it's not formal, so you can have more of that casual conversation as the customers are sitting waiting for their turn in the barber chair. You can talk with the barber as he has someone in his chair cutting hair, and it is just a really good opportunity to connect with the community that you wouldn't see at a Coffee with a Cop, that you wouldn't see at a community meeting. It's going to the community, and that's the responsibility that we have.
So have you personally been to some of the Shop Talks?
I absolutely have and love it.
Oh, the conversation's quite crazy because when y'all aren't there, they're crazy. When women aren't there with the guys, they're usually crazy. I'm like, what did they just say? And I'm talking to my husband on the phone. You hear all kinds of stuff.
They can be, and it's funny. The first time we go, it's usually about police issues for the first 15 or 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. And then it's about anything. We mainly talk about sports. We're guys, and that's what guys like to do, is we talk about sports and how our teams are doing. And it's more about building trust in relationships than it is about solving any community problems, which will allow us to solve those community problems as they arise, because now we've built that trust relationship.
One more quick question about Shop Talk. So while you're there, do you let them cut your hair?
I have not. I have not.
That's okay, maybe in the future. Okay, let's talk about this. Something else that's going on called Untos, or Untos con Irving.
Yes.
What is that?
That's our Spanish outreach. It's our opportunity to reach out into our Hispanic community, again, to develop relationships, to develop trust, and to show that community that we can be trusted. A lot of members of the Hispanic community come from countries where the police aren't always trustworthy. And so what they see on TV, what they hear in the news media, their own personal experiences, they come to us or come to our country and deal with us from a very distrustful standpoint. And so we want to break down those barriers. We want to show we can be trusted, we are trustworthy, we're there to help them solve their problems, to help them deal with their crime issues, and Juntos allows us to do that.
Wonderful. Now, we just had a big holiday celebration. The 4th of July just passed, and a lot of us have noticed that there's been an increase in police patrol. And I also know that there's actually something called Selective Traffic Enforcement Program. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Okay, our Selective Traffic Enforcement Program is a grant run from the state of Texas. And so what that grant allows us to do is pay officers overtime to come in and work extra duty hours to focus on traffic issues, usually speeding and seatbelt. And then on the holiday weekends, which is probably what brought it to your attention, driving while intoxicated offenses. So we're able to take extra police officers, put them on the street, and have them solely focus on those issues and then pay for that with grant money.
I see. Okay, well, that's a good thing, I know. It makes us behave and drive a little safer on the roads, a little slower for those of us who sometimes go a bit too fast. We'll work on that. Okay, so something else I've noticed is really just an increased focus from the department on social media. Tell me about that. What's going on with that? How is it helping?
Again, it's just a different way to reach into the community. Not everyone, especially millennials, feel comfortable coming to a community event. They don't have time. They don't see the need to come sit in a rec center or a fellowship hall at a church and hear someone talk to them about policing issues. They're on social media. They want to see it on Facebook or on Twitter or on Snapchat. That's where they get their news. That's where they feel connected. And so we need to reach them where they feel connected. And so through our social media team, we're able to do that through videos, through quick posts, through crime information, whatever we see as an opportunity to get our message out. We've now started using social media platforms to do that.
Wonderful. And there's also something online called Raids Online. How is that used?
So Raids Online, you can access from our website. It is a crime mapping tool. So you can go to our website, click on the crime map, enter some information about where you live, about how often you want to see this data, what data you want to see. Do you want to see all crime, or do you want to just see thefts or car thefts or home burglaries? And so there are different filters that you can apply to that crime map, and then look at your neighborhood. Where are the issues occurring? What should you be concerned of? And set that up on an alert basis so every morning when you wake up, you can know what's happened in your neighborhood overnight.
Wonderful. So in addition to social media, really technology is playing a huge role in policing these days. Body cameras, those have been a big issue, a big topic. Tell us what you think about them and why.
I think body cameras are a great tool for our police officers. And what I've seen are our officers embrace that technology, seeing the opportunity to show from their perspective how difficult of a job it is they have. Not everyone sees the job that they're doing day in and day out. Only when there's a controversial event that someone's filmed does that then make the news media. And so what we've seen are our officers embrace this technology. It's cut down on complaints against our police officers, not necessarily because our officers are behaving better, although that does sometimes happen. You behave differently when you know someone's watching, but because these citizens are behaving differently. They know they're being filmed as well. And so you naturally have each party involved knowing that they're being videoed, so you have a different response than you normally would. And it's certainly cut down on false complaints against our employees as well, because we can go to the video and see what the video says.
I was going to ask, is it really beneficial for you? Have you found it to be beneficial when you're going maybe into a courtroom or you're having to prove that something really did happen or didn't happen?
It does, because the public now expects that. The public expectation of everything that we do is recorded now is what they want to see in a courtroom. Used to, when I started in the late 80s and early 90s, a police officer's word was as good as gold. All we had to do was say it and people believed it. We're not there anymore. And people's expectation that we provide this kind of technology, that we provide our employees the ability to make these recordings now, when it's not there, people become suspicious on why it's not.
I see. So one of the initiatives that's really made an impact recently is the problem-solving team. Can you tell us about the latest focus with that?
So absolutely. The problem-solving team is a group of police officers that we move around the city depending on where we're having issues. And so we insert this team into the community. They go in there and use the SARA model. They scan for problems, they assess, and they look for the issues that are causing the problems. And they come back with a response to that issue, and develop a plan of action on how to address that issue. And so it's a way to take a small group of police officers, put them into the community, allow them to focus only on a specific area and deal with the issues, not just as they occur, but from a root cause standpoint, to figure out what's causing those crime issues and see if we can deal with that. Right now they're up in the Las Colinas area. The tremendous growth we've had in apartment complexes and parking garages makes it a shopping center for car burglars. You have all of these cars in one area. It makes for easy targets. We're able to put this team of officers in there, work with these property owners to figure out how best to secure their residents, their cars, their parking garages, and their apartments.
Yeah, I was going to talk about that just a minute here because we've noticed that there seems to be an increased police presence or a real focus on apartments. And in addition to trying to prevent car burglaries, why is it so important to have the police presence there at apartment complexes?
I think apartment complexes, because it's a transient population, you typically find people signing 6 months, 1 year leases and then moving on. So there's not that idea or that feeling of a neighborhood where you would in a single family neighborhood where people have lived at a home 10, 15, 20, 30 and 40 years and truly have ties to that neighborhood. So when you're addressing crime issues in an apartment complex, you need to be more visible. We're the glue that keeps that community together because everyone is so transient in that.
I see. Okay, so there is a program that some people may not be aware of, or a service, I should say, and it's called the Exchange Zone. So what is it and what's it for?
So,
can you give us?
Your viewers have probably read or heard on the news about robberies that occur through Craigslist or OfferUp.
Yes.
And so they go somewhere to meet someone to buy or sell a product that they have, and they never know who they're meeting. Most of these deals are legitimate, and it's just truly people wanting to sell their product or buy an item. But there are some that aren't so legitimate. There are people out there with nefarious ideas on how to make money or how to steal property from someone. So what we've done is in our parking lot at the police station, we've created an exchange zone. It's an area that's marked off. It has signage to where if you're wanting to conduct one of these transactions and you want a neutral place, a safe place to do this transaction, you can come to our parking lot, park in the parking spot to conduct the transaction. There's a video camera that records the interaction, and it just adds a level of safety to that.
I was going to ask you, so do people just get this fear of doing wrong because it's in the police department parking lot, but you actually have video cameras, so there's someone watching at all times?
There's a double layer there of protection.
Very good. Speaking of a double layer of protection, it's that time of year where a lot of people are going on vacation, and so you also offer something to help watch over your house while you're gone too.
Yeah. We are still a small community in how we want to treat our residents, and so we have what we call a vacation watch program. You can go to our website, sign up, let us know when you're going to be out of town, let us know how often you want the house checked on, if there's going to be anyone else checking on it. And as our officers have time, they'll come by, make sure everything is okay, make sure that the doors are still locked, the windows are locked, nothing's happened while you're gone, and then you just let us know when you get back in town.
Very good. And of course, you always have those neighbors that'll look out for us too. As you mentioned, it's important.
That's a good thing.
Definitely. So speaking of those neighbors, community policing, will that continue to play a role under your leadership?
It absolutely will. Community policing in concept is the community and the police department working together to identify and solve the problems that is in a neighborhood, that's in a business area, or in the city itself. We can't do our job without the community support. There's just not enough police officers, there's not enough tax dollars to pay enough police officers to go out and solve all of the problems. We need the community's help in identifying that. We need the community's help in providing solutions to those problems. And the idea of the programs I spoke of earlier is our way of reaching into the community, developing those relationships, building that trust so that when they do call us, then we can work together to solve the issue.
Wonderful. And in addition to working with the community, I know you also work with some other organizations and programs. And two things I want to specifically ask you about is how you've been able to benefit from working with animal services and also code enforcement.
So when there are crime problems, you typically also find code issues. You typically also find animal issues. And so having the ability to work with those other two city departments, although Animal Services actually reports to the police department, allows us to address an issue from a holistic standpoint. So if we go into a neighborhood to address a crime issue, but while we're there, we also see code issues, we also see animal ordinance violations, we can rely on those other city departments to come in to help us so that we're not just dealing with the crime issue, we're dealing with all of the issues, the disorder issues, the community neglect issues, the neighborhood neglect issues, if you would, and come in and truly make a difference so that when we leave, maybe the problem doesn't reoccur.
Wonderful. And I'm sure people have asked you to give your best tips on preventing crime, but we want to turn that a little bit around and ask you to advise residents on how they can work with police for crime prevention.
The most important thing I would encourage people to do is when they see something that doesn't look right to them, is to let us know. Because we're not in the community 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, on your street, in front of your house, at your business, we don't know what's normal and what's not normal. And so when residents see something that is just not normal, it seems out of place, we describe it as those little hairs on the back of your neck stand up, you get that feeling that something's not right, instead of going, oh, I'll just ignore it and maybe it's nothing, pick up the phone and call us. If it's an emergency, call 911. But if it's just something that you're not sure about, that you think maybe the police officer should come by and talk to this person or look at this vehicle or check on a house, call the non-emergency line and just let them know what you see, describe what the issue is, and let a police officer come out. That's why you have us, is to come out and check on things that just aren't right. And let us make a determination. Is there something going on, or is it just something innocuous?
So what kind of calls do you get on that non-emergency line? Are people calling to say maybe that there's been a car parked in front of a house for too long, or there's someone going around the house that they're suspicious about? When should you call?
So again, anytime that you see something that doesn't look right to you, if it is a car parked in front of your house, absolutely call the non-emergency line. If it's a parking violation, if it's a loud noise, if it's anything that's disrupting your peace and quiet at your home or at your business, then let us know. Let us come handle it if you haven't been able to work it out. If you see someone that you don't recognize creeping around your neighbor's house, probably pick up the phone and call 911. That's something we want to come out on and check on immediately. Residential burglaries is one of the crime issues that we spend a lot of time fighting, and our best weapon against that are nosy neighbors. Neighbors who see somebody over at their neighbor's house who doesn't belong, that they've never seen there before, a vehicle parked out front, a vehicle backed into a driveway. All of those are clues that as a neighbor, I would want you calling the police to say, hey, there's somebody over at Jeff's house that I've never seen there before. Will you come check it out?
Good advice. Okay, so Chief Spivey, something else I want to talk about, because you've talked about these initiatives where you're reaching out to the adults, you're reaching out to different communities and people from all different walks of life, but you're also reaching out to young people, getting kids involved with police officers at an early age through what they call the PAL program, or the Police Athletic League.
Yeah.
So can you tell us about that and why it's so beneficial?
So the sooner we can start establishing trust relationships, the stronger that those trust relationships are as those kids grow up. So our ability to reach into the community, get kids plugged into activities where they're around police officers and begin to feel comfortable with police officers, that begins establishing that trust relationship. The PAL program is just one of the many ways that we do that, whether it's through our urban outdoors program, through our boxing program. It gets kids an opportunity to get out of the house, to be in an activity that's safe, an activity that is something that they can build upon and learn from, and an activity that puts them in front of police officers so that they know that we're people that they can trust.
Yeah, and people that have to be in shape too, because we were watching some video while you were describing that to us. And so it keeps you all in check as well, because I mean, there's all kinds of different sports programs and the officers are really hands-on and involved.
There are, absolutely, and they have a passion for it. It's something that you love to do, or you wouldn't do it. You would find something else in policing that was less strenuous and didn't cause you to sweat as much.
All right. Okay, so from talking about those sports with PAL, let's talk about Special Olympics, because I know the department is very involved with that. How so?
So Special Olympics is our opportunity from a law enforcement standpoint, statewide. What we do is the law enforcement torch run. It's our opportunity to donate money to the Special Olympics for those Special Olympians to compete in the local and the statewide games. The statewide games are held over in Arlington at the UTA Stadium, and it's our department's way of giving back to the community. We do a penny drive with the school district where we challenge the elementary schools to bring their loose change, and then we host an ice cream social, an ice cream party for whichever school raises the most money. We do car hop events at Sonic. We sell t-shirts, just a great way for us to give back to the community that gives to us.
You guys do a lot of involvement in the community that really has people loving the Irving Police Department, which is a good thing. And you do other community events as well. You send officers out to different schools and different organizations to speak, is that correct?
Absolutely. One of our most successful programs is our SRO program. People don't often think of that as a community outreach tool, but when you go back and talk to kids who have recently graduated high school or have been out for a few years, they can always tell you who their SRO was. Not because they got in trouble, not because they needed police help, just because of the relationship that those kids can develop with a police officer in a setting, again, where they're comfortable, it's their environment, and it breaks down those barriers and allows that relationship to develop that carries on through their adult life.
For sure. And speaking of relationships, I know there are times when there's just tragedy within the department. And one of the moms of an officer who passed away, Mrs. Esparza, Andrew Esparza Foundation 5K, I know that she gives back and spends time with the community and comes and hangs out with y'all. How important is it to keep that relationship with families of police officers who are fallen officers and those who are living, but just to be connected with their families?
It's important in that it's a great reminder of the sacrifice that our men and women make on a daily basis. Some of the sacrifices our employees have made have been the ultimate sacrifice, and to keep that connection, to keep that reminder, to keep that memory of that officer alive, to have the connection to the family is really important. We have a number of employees who work here who've never worked with Andrew, who never worked with Aubrey, or never worked with Glenn, and so that reminder to them that there were people here before you that made a sacrifice. I think it makes it more important to them as well.
Thank you, and thank you for what you do each and every day to keep us safe.
Oh, thank you for your support.
You bet. And thank you so much for watching. I'm Starlene Stringer. Please be sure to join us on Thursday, August 10th at 1:30 p.m. for our next edition of Open Line. We'll see you then.